what it feels like to finish your first game.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Oh my goodness.
I'm on top of the world.
And in this video, I'll show you how I ended up finishing my first Steam game against all odds and help you to get the motivation you need to finish your project as well. The first thing that motivated me to finish my game was actually pretty selfish, but I bet you can relate to this too. Picture this, you're working a 9-to-5 office job where you're going to class every day and every day just feels like a slog. You wake up every morning dreading that you have to drive to work or school and sit through the whole day working on stuff that you absolutely don't care about, while not being able to stop thinking about that dream game idea that's always in the back of your mind. This was very much my situation before finishing my first game. I thought if I just release it, then maybe, just maybe, I'll get one step closer to being able to make games full time instead of being stuck in my cubicle all day looking at, well, this.
So for me, keeping my eyes on the prize of quitting my job and setting those high-level goals was quite possibly the #1 thing that I used to remind myself of to get that game finished.
But it turns out this becomes a little bit more complicated if your game, well, if your game sucks. So while quitting your job is a powerful motivator, having it as your main one definitely has a dark side to it.
Because I realized that the game just wasn't getting the amount of wishlist that it needed for me to be able to fulfill that dream. It felt like everything was crumbling apart. And deep down, I knew that I wasn't going to be ready to quit my job even if the game did succeed. It was full of bugs, and the people who had played it didn't even really like it.
Really not that much going on there. Absolutely just walking around rooms.
Yikes.
I felt like I was at the very bottom of a tall mountain, only taking like one step a day, and when I thought I was at the peak, it turned out that there were much bigger mountains beyond it. In other words, I was a lot farther from quitting my job than I had hoped. That's not to say though that you should forget about those big dreams. Absolutely not. I just realized that for myself, well, I just needed to find other reasons to get that thing to the finish line.
But Andre,
I hear you asking.
if you knew your game wasn't going to get you to your dream, why did you finish it?
Well, dear viewer, that brings me to reason number 2. See, I could have ended the project as soon as I realized it wasn't going to pour in the cash. I might have thought, well, I learned a lot, I'll take what I learned and start a new project that'll be much better and probably more appealing to people. And to be honest, in a lot of cases, it probably is a better idea to scrap your game and move on to better things.
But to understand when you should keep working on your project, I have another mountain analogy that fits perfectly.
Okay, so at one point while me and my friend were hiking up to Lake Bourgeot, we've been climbing for 2 hours through an extremely monotonous forest, and at one point we were ready to just stop. But we thought, okay, we'll push on for a little bit longer, and if it doesn't open up, we'll go back. But if it does open up, we'll just rest there. And sure enough, we basically almost sprinted the last few hundred meters, and the forest opened up into an amazing lake, and the view was just overwhelming. So you don't always know how long it'll take you to finish your game. In fact, early on when making games, if you find that you're 90% done, you actually have another 90% left to go. And if you're in this situation, the most important thing that you can do, and I'd say you probably have to do, especially if your wish lists just aren't there, is unfortunately take that 90% and just cut it right off.
The reason for this is because, in my opinion, you actually learn the most from releasing a game, failed or not. Because when it comes down to it, the skills you're gaining in game dev actually have very little to do with how good of a programmer or artist you are.
Releasing my game helped me to realize that the actual most important skill in game dev that you need is understanding how to piece together high quality, fun games efficiently. And if you never ship, you can never look back on a project and say, well, this is why people were leaving bad reviews, or why it didn't make money, or why people got bored. On a somewhat unrelated note, and actually guys, I'm gonna get serious here for a second. What I think a lot of people don't realize about making games is that even if you're working on your dream game, it does eventually become just another project. It ends up feeling like work. You end up basically back in that cubicle staring at that ancient code, except this time it's terrible code that you wrote yourself. And it's not a cubicle, it's your own room. You hardly recognize it anymore.
Which is why I'm convinced that you have to start small, or at least scale down your project and not spend more than 6 months on it. The fact is, you're gonna hate your game right before the end. Just like climbing a mountain, game development can be really tedious, really disheartening, but remember, when you get closer and closer to the top, when it gets steeper and steeper, is exactly when the rewards await you.
So I guess that's what pushed me to release my game. I worked really hard on it, I fought with it, I couldn't stand it anymore, but I wanted to be a game developer. I wanted to get it done and over with, and I was sure I wasn't going to get anything out of it by this point. But when I uploaded that final build to Steam, I took that day off work to get everything set up for launch and just celebrate. My goodness, I couldn't then, and I still can't quite put into words now how amazing it is to say that I built something, that I dipped my toes into this wonderful craft, that I climbed that mountain I set out out to climb on, and by God's grace, it's out there now. And you know what? Despite its flaws, it's really not that bad for a first try, is it? And I don't think anything can replace that amazing sense of accomplishment you get when you do release that first game. What are you waiting for? Get it out there. And when you do, when that new idea starts brewing in your head, and when you want to take everything you learned and move on to better things, you'll be much better equipped to take on all the new challenges that will come your way. Check out this video right here next, and combined with what you just learned, it'll make the road to releasing your first truly successful game 7 times better. Thanks for watching, and God bless.